isn't just for Caitlin, but you asked me about Caitlin. If you're going to break a record, to me, if it's legitimate, you have to break that record in the same amount of time that that player set it.
Okay.
Right?
The WNBA is currently experiencing the greatest financial boom in the history of women's sports. And somehow, the veterans of the league are still finding ways to complain. Instead of saying thank you, they are embarrassing themselves on a national stage, trying to cancel the very person who is single-handedly paying their salaries, Caitlin Clark. Let's get one thing straight right out of the gate. The Indiana Fever just made history by having all 44 of their regular season games broadcast on national television. 44 games. Every single time Caitlin Clark laces up her sneakers in 2026, the entire country will be watching. But instead of celebrating this massive victory for women's basketball, a loud and bitter group of WNBA veterans are throwing a collective temper tantrum. They are fuming behind the scenes, leaving passive-aggressive comments in the media, and practically begging reporters to focus on anyone else. But the numbers do not lie, and the networks certainly do not care about their hurt feelings. Before Caitlin Clark arrived, these veterans spent years playing in half-empty arenas. They played in glorified high school gymnasiums, where the squeak of the sneakers was literally louder than the crowd noise. Now, they are suddenly defensive, claiming that the league was already growing and it takes a village to build a sport. No, it really doesn't. It took exactly one player with a lethal step-back three and a passing vision that bends reality to make the world actually care. And the veterans absolutely hate it. They despise the fact that a 24-year-old guard from Iowa walked into their league and immediately became the undisputed face of the franchise. You can see the jealousy leaking out in every single press conference. When asked about the Fever's unprecedented broadcasting deal, the old guard of the WNBA tries to quickly pivot the conversation. They roll their eyes. They give tight-lipped, forced smiles and say predictable things like, "Well, there are a lot of great players in this league who deserve that kind of TV time." No, they don't. Deserving has absolutely nothing to do with it. Television networks are not charitable organizations meant to stroke egos. They do not hand out primetime slots based on seniority or how many years you spent grinding in the shadows. They hand out primetime slots based on who brings in the eyeballs, and right now, the veterans are humiliating themselves by refusing to accept that reality. They are trying to cancel the phenomenon, subtweeting about fairness and equality, while happily cashing the massive new paychecks that are only mathematically possible because of the Caitlin Clark effect. It is the ultimate form of hypocrisy. They want the chartered private flights, they want the NBA-level locker rooms, and they want the multi-million-dollar corporate sponsorships. But they refuse to acknowledge the golden goose who laid the egg. By acting this way, these veterans aren't proving that they are overlooked. They are just proving that they are out of touch with reality. Let's break down the sheer financial magnitude of this 44-game reality check, because the business side of this story exposes the veterans' embarrassment even further. We are not talking about one or two obscure regional sports networks doing a favor for the Indiana Fever. We are talking about the biggest media conglomerates on planet Earth. Disney is putting 13 games on ABC and 17 more on ESPN. Amazon Prime Video is completely locked in. NBC Universal is throwing games on Peacock and NBCSN. USA Network, ION, CBS, and Paramount Plus are all clearing their schedules. That is basically every single major media company in America looking at the WNBA roster and universally agreeing that Caitlin Clark is the only guaranteed moneymaker. The executives sitting in these billion-dollar boardrooms do not care about who has been in the league the longest. They run the analytics. They see that when the veterans play each other, the ratings absolutely flatline. But when Clark walks onto the court, the viewership instantly rivals prime NBA broadcast games. The veterans arguing against this are fighting a losing battle against raw, unfiltered capitalism. Think about the physical arenas themselves. When the Indiana Fever play at home, they are packing Gainbridge Fieldhouse with over 17,000 screaming fans. The atmosphere is completely electric. It looks, sounds, and feels like a major league sporting event. Advertisers pay a massive premium for that exact energy. Now, look at the teams where these complaining veterans play. Some of them are still trying to sell out small civic centers in front of 3,000 people. You cannot broadcast a game from a tiny, quiet gym and expect primetime advertising dollars. The broadcast looks amateurish, the camera angles are suffocating, and the crowd energy is dead. Yet, the veterans want equal airtime. They demand that the networks treat a mid-season game in a college-sized gym with the same reverence as a sold-out Caitlin Clark blockbuster. It is absolute, undeniable delusion. And this is where the embarrassment peaks for the league's old guard. Every time a veteran complains about the Fever's 44 national games, they are publicly admitting that they cannot draw a crowd on their own. They spent years screaming that the world was sexist, or that the media was unfair, and that was the only reason women's basketball wasn't a global sensation. Then Caitlin Clark arrived, shattered every single viewership record, brought in millions of new fans, and proved that the audience was always there. They were just waiting for a product worth watching. The veterans are furious because their ultimate excuse has been permanently taken away. The market ran a ruthless test, and the market decided that the issue wasn't the gender of the athletes, the issue was the entertainment value. The numbers prove that people will watch women's basketball as long as Clark is holding the ball. Instead of elevating their games, the veterans are just pouting in the corner. The most pathetic part of this entire saga is how the veterans try to handle Caitlin Clark when they actually face her on the court. Because they cannot beat her in the television ratings and they cannot beat her in merchandise sales, they resort to the only desperate tactic they have left: physical intimidation and dirty plays. But even that strategy is blowing up in their faces spectacularly. You see it every single time the Indiana Fever step onto the hardwood. The opposing veterans come out with a massive chip on their shoulder, desperate to prove that the rookie phenomenon is just media hype. They throw cheap shots away from the referees, they set illegal screens, and they try to aggressively rough her up off the ball. They want to send a physical message. But the only message they end up sending to the millions watching at home is that they are entirely outclassed. Clark just brushes off the hits, pulls up from the logo, and drains a three right in their faces. You can literally see the spirit leave their bodies when they realize they simply cannot stop her. In the post-game press conferences, the tension in the room is thick enough to cut with a knife. The reporters inevitably ask about Clark's dominant performance, and you watch these seasoned veterans physically squirm in their seats. They give these backhanded compliments, saying things like, "She shoots a lot of volume, so of course she's going to score," or "Our defense just had a minor lapse today." They will say absolutely anything to avoid admitting that they just got completely cooked by a vastly superior player. It is a televised masterclass in denial. They are trying to cancel her impact by ignoring it. But you cannot ignore a tidal wave when you are already drowning. The entire league's ecosystem now revolves completely around the Indiana Fever. Players are getting customized shoes and national recognition purely because they happen to be in the same highlight reel. History will not be kind to this specific era of WNBA veterans. Instead of warmly welcoming the player who finally put their sport on the global map, they chose to be bitter. They chose to be the unlikable villains in a story where they could have just easily enjoyed the historic ride. Decades from now, when sports historians look back at the explosion of women's basketball in 2026, they won't remember the names of the veterans who complained about their lack of television airtime. They will only remember the 44 broadcasted games, the packed NBA-sized arenas, and the undisputed GOAT who changed the game forever. The veterans tried their hardest to cancel Caitlin Clark, and in the process, they only managed to cancel their own legacies. Let me know down in the comments below, whose side are you actually on? Are you supporting the Golden Goose by commenting Clark? Or are you siding with the bitter veterans by commenting haters? Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe.